Death to the death penalty. You can fight fire with fire is a common saying, but does this apply to the death penalty? Why is taking the life of another person the outcome for taking the life of the first person? Today, I'll be informing you as to why the death penalty is dated and should be abolished, and we'll be discussing how it is not a deterrent of crime, how it is very expensive, and how there is a very big racial bias in the skewed history of the death penalty. Today, I will inform my audience of these things and explain why it should be abolished. After extensive research, I am now educated enough to inform my audience of these facts. Many consider the death penalty to be a deterrent of other crimes, or a deterrent of crimes. But according to Richard Burke, this is simply not the case. The reaction from the death penalty is only causes more violent crime outbursts, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. This all happened whenever the death penalty was reinstated in 1973. And also, according to procon.org, there is no substantial evidence that the death penalty does deter violent crimes and murder. But who pays for the death penalty? The death penalty is very expensive. From the point of the trial to the execution, it can cost up to $1.4 million. And this rate has been rising over the last 40 years, according to the Department of Criminology at the University of Justice. Also, compared to the $700,000 that life in prison costs in the state of Virginia, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, this is simply inefficient and not sustainable. Another really important thing is racial bias. People who murder whites are more likely to be sentenced to death according to the Death Penalty Information Center. And if you look at this graph right here, black people are disproportionately executed compared to the 13% of the population that they make up to the almost third they make up in this graph. We'll be watching a short video.
By the mid-19th century, some states were beginning to question state executions. Still, capital punishment remained largely intact, but to some, the process wasn't efficient enough in exacting cruelty.
Lynch mobs often criticize the state-sanctioned execution processes as being slow and ineffective and costly, and therefore decided that they wanted to take a mechanism into their own hands and issue racial terror themselves.
This is Robert Bunsen.
In that video, they described how state-sanctioned executions are just a more developed and governed version of lynching and how they've progressed in today's world. That video explained and goes on to explain how it's just a bad culture and how it has negatively affected, how it negatively has a racial bias and how it negatively affects racial discrepancies. So what does that leave us? Is it right and is it ethical? I have now explained to y'all why the death penalty is not a deterrent of crime and how it is not cost efficient, how it does have extensive racial bias. The death penalty is a negative part of society. This is not just an issue for those wrongfully convicted and later exonerated, or those who are even wrongfully convicted and executed. This is a problem for the families of those who are wrongfully convicted and executed, wrongfully convicted and exonerated. Also, many times the families of victims do not want anything to do with the execution. They want all the deaths to just stop, the loss to just end. And it even seems that oftentimes it just brings more hurt and negativity into the world. I hope y'all can now form your own opinion on the death penalty with these facts that were provided to you. Thank you.